Hi everyone, thanks for checking out another Eagle Eye video. Today we're going to focus on the BMW E30, which was the second generation 3 Series from BMW. And this car is really an icon nowadays. It is what was produced between 82 and 94, so it's really like an 80s BMW actually. And the run-out models were delivered in 94. So this car is the second generation that has really put BMW in the map. It's really has a cult following by now. It has many engines on sale. It has diesels, petrols. It has a 4-cylinder petrol, a 6-cylinder petrol. But the inline 6 is, in the 325 and stuff like that. They also had an M3, which is really... it has a big cult status. I always liked the fact that it was competing against the 190 Mercedes-Benz with the Cosworth engine, and those cars are just icons from its time, like late 80s, not 2000s, early 90s. The best that they had to offer, and these cars were cheap in the early 2000s. I remember a friend owning an E30 in 2004, and he bought it for a couple of hundred euros, and that was a 318i, so it was not something very special. But if you look at the E30 325i, for instance, you have to pay quite some money, especially if it's in good condition. These cars are being flipped often. I mean, they're being bought as a barn find, or maybe from an old grandpa who had it for 30 years, and if you make sure that the paint job is good and the rust is taken care of, and there's a healthy engine in it, especially if it's an inline 6, these cars can be flipped and a lot of profit can be made on them. So it could also be an interesting project car for you, either for selling or really keeping it, because this is a piece of BMW history, if you ask me. But you're not for all the obvious talk here. You're here for hearing what all the issues are when you buy E30. And let me go into that. Of course, this is a 30-plus-year-old car, so rust will be an issue. They are not very well known for rust, but if they sleep outside for the last 30 years, rust will be an issue. And rust you can find it almost everywhere. You can find it near the doors, at the boot lid, especially there at the side panels of the doors. It really depends on where the car is from. Because if you purchase an E30 that was bought in California, for instance, where you have soft winters, the E30 will be much better than, for instance, if you buy an E30 from Eastern Europe, or maybe even from the Netherlands or Germany, because we could have some harsh winters, and we did have some harsh winters in the last 30 years. So that's something to look out for. Other things that the main places that the rust will go for the E30, the jack point pinch wells on either side of the car, license plate, light bezel, the floor pan, the rocker panels, the battery tray, which can be found in the trunk on the passenger side or in the engine bay, the sunroof if your car was equipped with one of those, the rear subframe, the rear shock tower, tail light bezels. Also check under the trunk carpet and the tail light area, rear fender archers, and the base of the windshield. Those are the most common rust spots. Engine inspection. It really depends on what kind of engine that you want to buy. But if we go for the M10 inspection, which is the 318i, the M10 is the engine code. They're very reliable due to its simplicity, which is always a good thing in my book. So 4 cylinders are quite reliable, actually. The three most common issues on the M10 engine are the rocker slippage, cam rocker slippage, a failure-prone thermostat, a carburetor issue on very early models, so from the mid-80s. Cam rocker issues are common if the M10 has run hard during its lifetime. So really, if you have an X-Track car with a 4-cylinder, you will have more work than a car that has been sitting in the garage and was driven by grandpa, so to speak. But that's very obvious. Cylinder heads can be prone after all these years. They can crack in half. It will be a costly issue to resolve. The thermostat on the M10, again we're talking about the 318i, can be a little bit brittle and prone to a failure from the factory, and 30 years down the line it will only be more brittle. So chances are that you have the thermostat have to be replaced or was replaced at some point. We also have the M42 engine, and this was the late models of the 318IS. It was also a 4-cylinder, and they had some problems, particularly due to age at this time. The cam, chain, roller, gear, retaining bolt, and the rubber gasket at the front of the cylinder head are a little bit brittle. High mileage M42 powered cars, the retaining bolts that hold the cam, chain, controller gear in place has been known to snap. And once again, if the E30 is still running, chances are that this issue has been resolved in the past. High mileage M42s have an issue with the rubber gaskets and components wearing that are significantly from years of service. All in all, also not a very big deal. The most problematic for the M42 is the rubber profile gasket at the front of the cylinder head, and it could either be cracked or worn. The gasket will allow coolant to get into the engine oil, and a common fix is that common fix to this issue could be upgrading the engine component with a later developed E36 part, which was not the predecessor but the successor. Yes, the successor. Then we have the M20 engines, which is the 325, the E, the I, the IC, and the IX, and the X stands for four-wheel drive. And the M20 engine is perhaps the most reliable and durable engine of the whole E30 range. So if you can, and if you want to, then go for the M20. And then you also have one of the best engines that BMW ever made. I mean, BMW is known for making very nice sounding, torquey, peppy inline sixes, and the M20 motor is quite good, but it is also notorious for needing frequent timing belt maintenance. There's timing belts that can snap. It's very important that you change the timing belt every 50,000 or 60,000 miles or every 5 years. If the previous owner isn't able to provide the timing belt service history, it might be a good idea to do it yourself soon after purchase. The M20s are also known for having issues with the cylinder head, hairline cracks. Cracks tend to happen under the front cam journals, which allow coolant to leak into the engine, and the best solution would be to purchase a quality used cylinder head, which is possible to repair cracks in the cylinder head. Replacing it with an undamaged head is the best option. Also, a lot of E30s, they suffer from cooling system issues. We also talked about this when we talked about the E36. The coolant systems were just not sufficient for the engine. They were a little bit underperforming. So this is a weaker part. Maybe you can get a new part, or maybe you can, really have it inspected and regularly check these kind of things. The most common issue include a weak fan clutch, broken auxiliary fan, clogged radiator, failing head gasket, or a stuck thermostat. And the car can be overheating while stationary, and the fan clutch is most likely the issue. Then there are some reports of common sources of leaks. The most common leak sources indicate the valve cover gasket, the oil pan gasket, rear main seal, and the oil filter. These cars also tend to leak some oil, especially because these are old cars, and especially if they had a hard life. So check your oil level frequently and check these leaks, these common places of leaks. Furthermore, guys, this car is such an icon. It's so well documented that if you can do some of the maintenance work yourself, you can save yourself a lot of money, but you can have a whole diary or a whole Bible, E30 Bible, so to speak, that you can bring with you and then check every E30 you come across. These cars, especially when they're well maintained, well documented, these cars are now pretty expensive, especially the inline sixes, and forget about the M3 from the time, because let's say in 1990s, M3 is maybe 70, 80k in euros, maybe even more. You should do a test drive on these cars, and you should feel what the car is like on the road. A well-sorted E30 should feel planted and stable, and it should feel safe on the road. The car should give you great confidence because the chassis of the E30 is just a masterpiece, basically, if you compare it to what is on the road nowadays. It still feels modern, and it's really giving you this connected driver's feel, and that's exactly why the E30 is such a loved car. There are many more things I can go over, but again, I will keep this video as big as this one at this moment. There are plenty of guides out there, and I just wanted to cover the E30 because it's such an icon. Overall, I hope this buyer's review was useful, and if you go for E30, just leave me a comment below this video because I'm very curious about that, and I wish you all the luck in the world, and I think you're making a great choice because this is a future classic. It's already a classic, but I can't stress it enough. The era of BMW like this, it will never come back anymore. Thanks for listening, and we hope you have a great day.